What does junior year in college for superheroes to be look like? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to another edition of Dro Talks. It's been a while. I had to take a month off, but I missed you all. So, superpowers. Year 3. If you've been following my videos, you know that I've reviewed Superpowers Year 1, Superpowers Year 2, and Corpies, which is kind of like the in-between 2 and 3. So now we are at 3, junior year. So for the less patient of you out there that just want to know, do I pick this book up or not? Do I listen to this audiobook or not? Do it. If you've seen the other 2 videos, I gave them 5 out of 5s. No surprise here, this one keeps up to par. Amazing. Do yourself a favor, get yourself into this universe, you will not regret it. But for the rest of you, please be aware of spoilers for books 1, 2, and Corpies. In year 3, I'm going to try to keep it spoiler light. Superpowers Year 3 is the junior year. If you remember, Superpowers Year 1 was basically filtering the weak from the not so weak. And how do they do that? By running like heck. And there's a lot of training battles, or mock battles, I guess, if you will. And by the end of year 1, you filter out about 50% of the class. Year 2 was all about teamwork. Year 3 is all about one against multiple enemies. And they train that way. Pretty much year 3 is a bunch of bouts, one against 2 or more of their classmates. Scenarios where they're put against robots, or what they call sims. And it's interesting because here you start seeing the gap between the class in junior year. This is where you start seeing people falling behind and people truly coming up forward. So if you're familiar with superpowers, you know that there's several pivotal moments in the story. The first one is Halloween. Second one is Christmas break. The third one is around spring break. And then the final one is the end of the year. So let's start with the first one, Halloween. And the first true love of Vince came into existence. And I think Mary said it best when she said, "Halloween, you son of a bitch." So of course that set everything back for Vince and Camille. And Camille, she's a sweetheart. She has a love for Vince for saving her back when they were like 9 years old. That adoration just keeps her in love with him. It don't hurt that Vince is what you can consider the perfect human being, even though he's a super or once a powered. It's just his moral compass is due north. He doesn't live in a gray world. He understands that it's there. He understands that some people have to live in it, but for him, it's black and white. And that is very comforting in our world as well as this fictional world. While Alice, with her gravity power, she jumps way from the back of the class and becomes a large competitor. Vince is no longer middle of the pack. He pretty much closed that year 2 finale when he took on the entire class minus his team and just held them at bay thanks to Nick's brain jacking that he did. So Vince is no longer middle of the pack. Roy, which was never middle of the pack, is still at 5. In his combat rankings. I think Vince goes from 7 to 4, if I'm not mistaken. Alice goes from, I don't remember what number it was. She was like 19 or 20. And she jumps all the way from the back, and she's like at 7. Who fell behind? Well, Michael, he went away. Bye-bye. After trying to kill Vince during year 2. So he got kicked out. He got sent to Lander East. Nick is completely out of the program, which is a key point because Nick, even though he got expelled from the program, decided to come back to Lander, and he had his memory fogged over. But Nick is Nick, and he took very detailed notes of all his time there. So he knows who everyone is. He knows what the program is. He knows everything. He's very conniving. And he knows that he left himself a mystery, and he went back to figure out that mystery because Nick don't really need to go to college to get a degree. I mean, he needs to go to college to get the paper. But so he goes back to Lander with knowing who these people are, but without that emotional tie. He don't have memories of what they went through and all their years up until this point. But there's a little piece of him there's cracks in these fogs. And a little piece of him gives him intuition. When he sees Alice, he feels a sensation akin to love, which he don't really understand. He knew that they were kind of interested in each other, but he was very surprised by this. When he sees Vince for the first time, he's shocked. He's happy to see him, genuinely happy to see him, and that also surprised him. When he sees Mary, he feels both uncomfortable and safe at the same time. And same thing with Roy and Herschel. When he sees them two, he just has a sense of pride in what they're becoming, and he don't understand these emotions that he's feeling. But Nick didn't come to Lander by himself. Vegas followed him in the form of Nathaniel Evers, which is basically the counterpart crime family to Nick's crime family. And Nathaniel wants one thing and one thing only. He wants to kill Nick, and he tries and fails pretty spectacularly. Because Nathaniel didn't understand a key thing. He thinks Nick is a Poward still, because he's been a Poward his whole life. And you got to remember, even though the HCP class of Lander knows that something can turn Powards into supers, the rest of the world does not. So Alice decides to take Nick out on a date. Very guilty that she didn't move on her feelings. She felt very strong for him. And boom, all of a sudden you don't have any memories of her. So they go on a date. Because Nick, like I said, he has this intuition that he feels like he loves her. Nathaniel attacks, perfect plan, disables Nick, about to get his revenge. So she gravitated him and did all kinds of cool stuff. And he understood that he was not playing with regular humans anymore. So he upped his game, and he reached down, got more contacts, and planned more elaborate schemes that we'll talk about down the road. So Halloween passed. Trials aside, new rankings, what they are, we get to winter break. Winter break was also kind of mundane compared to the last books, and the biggest revelation in winter break was really Camille told Vince how she felt, and that sounds very minute. Like, really, that's the big reveal? There's a couple other reveals, but this one was the most heartfelt because her and Vince were really trying to form something, and then boom, love from the past came in. Vince is confused. Don't know what he wants to do, don't want to hurt anyone. And Camille just tells him that she loves him and that she'll wait for him, and that she don't have to tell him anything now, and he can take his time. So we get to spring break. Again, more trials in between, more awesome fights. And there's this big, wild goodbye to the school for the next 2 weeks at the bar where several of them work. Roy works there, Chad works there, Alice works there, Angela works there. And there's this competition. A lot of fun in that. But the big takeaway from that is that place gets attacked by Nathaniel Evers. And you find a couple cool things. Everyone survives. Maybe. But that's when we find out that Nathaniel didn't go away. He's still here. And his attempts are obviously increasing in scope. So Nick is very worried for everyone. He finally comes clean to everyone that this was Nathaniel Evers doing. He explains to everyone that he's trying to figure out what's going on, but he really don't know what's going on. We also get a little bit more of Globe, Charles Adair, and a lot of the backstory of the class of legends. We start getting a little bit more of that filtered out. We also start hearing rumors through a vision that there might be a potential war between humans, supers, and Powards that might have the chance to destroy humanity. And we find out that there's several pathways, most likely pathways, and there's a chance that if two people get together and build a world of love, that there won't be as bad a war, there won't be a war. It's very subtle. But they do know that this class of Powards, these people and the people around them, are pivotal in some way or fashion, but we have no idea. They also mentioned a champion or rise, and basically be what unifies the world. But he or she, because they don't identify gender, he or she may or may not exist, and it depends on love above all things. So Disney. Drew Hayes, you went Disney on us. The classes start coming into play, especially subtlety. Subtlety and probably weapons are the two classes that you see the most of in year 3. The other ones, close combat, they just fight, and it's nothing very spectacular. There's some good moments in there. But subtlety is all about being a spy, being mischievous, gathering information. So they break those classes down a lot more with Professor Pendleton. Weapons is they don't go into it as much as they do in subtlety, but Roy's in weapons, and Roy chose a bat because he's like, I'm a strong man. I don't really need to be here. Everyone knows I'm going close combat. So Roy just chose a bat, and the professor was actually like, good choice, I see your thought process, and that's pretty good. So those are the two classes that really get fleshed out. But subtlety is on the last main fight, I guess, where it's one against a bunch of Sims. In subtlety, they're given a task, and that's to uncover this cipher. A string of clues, and they gotta do social hacking, actual hacking, cipher breaking. They gotta do all these obstacles to get this information. They don't even know what this information is. All they know is they'll be their grade on the final. So we get to the final battle, or the final assessment, the exam, if you will, where they gotta go up against a lot of Sims. So here's where we first learn what the subtlety exam was about. And basically, depending on how many ciphers or how far you went, determined how many foes you faced. So the subtlety heroes, or the ones in the subtlety class, this is where their gap became apparent, because some were able to decipher, some just weren't able to. That becomes. And this is also where we learned that Vince is truly just an amazing individual. He wasn't the first to go, he didn't volunteer. And a lot of more powerful people went before him and just destroyed the Sims. When Vince went over there, he grouped them, he set it up where they were grouped together, and he absorbed the light, because Vince is an absorber, and and when there were no lights, he yelled that they were all under arrest, that to lay down, put their hands behind their head, anyone still standing will be considered dangerous, and please to make the right choice. And the lights went back on, and sure enough, several of them were on their bellies with their hands behind their head. Vince took quick work of the rest of them, and there we go. It was a moment just to show how seriously Vince takes being a superhero. And Vince, he's a moral compass, due north all the way. This is also where we see Camille and Alice, and we understand why they shot up from the back of the pack all the way to the front, and they just totally decimated their opponent. And we learned a couple things about Camille too, that she is one heck of a damage dealer. So by the end of year 3, Vince and Camille are pretty much becoming an item, still not 100%, and everyone's celebrating the final exam. Everyone feels pretty good. A couple people don't feel that good. Then there's an attack on Lander. An attack by the Sons of Progress, which is a hate group. It's a hate group of supers that feel they are superior to humans. They don't like the DVA and their involvement. And their goal was to attack a superhero campus, that trains future supers, and with death and destruction. Kill as many humans and potential supers as possible. And it's all led by this individual named Crispin. And Crispin, he's an amplifier. So he amplifies a bunch of just supers and sets them loose. And they are causing destruction. And here's where all the students are beneath the school, and the professors are there, and Dean Blaine tells them all, you all cannot go up there and fight. You stay here and let us handle this. And other supers will come, and this will be over shortly. And Vince gets up and says, I can't do that, sir. And he starts walking the door, and Dean Blaine straight up tells him, if you walk out that door, you're going to throw your potential career away as a superhero. You will be expelled. If you cannot follow a simple order, how can anyone depend on you? And Vince just looks back at him and says, if I stay here when people need my help, and I know I could have helped, I don't deserve to be a superhero. And then he looks at Dean Blaine and he goes, I understand what you have to do. I understand what I'm doing. And I accept that. I appreciate all my time here in Lander, and I will miss it deeply. But I cannot live with myself if I just do nothing. And with that, pretty much the whole class stands up. First, the Powards, the Mel Brooks students, go behind him. Then Chad, which is Dean Blaine's godson. And Dean Blaine's like, all of you are idiots. You're throwing away your futures. As I cannot protect you from this. You walk out those doors, you all will be expelled. And he says, but I have never been more proud of a bunch of students in my life. And with that, Ralph Chapman, which kind of hates supers and was kind of in leagues and in conjunction, got tangled in, I guess would be the best way to say it, between this fight between Nick and Nathaniel, had papers on hand ready to authorize from the DVA all these students to be rescue heroes. They couldn't engage supers unless it was in self-defense, but they could rescue the students. And with that, all the students donned gray masks. They went out there and they saved a whole bunch of humans that I say humans, but in this book it was really fellow students. Because you got to remember, even though this group of heroes are together, they do mingle. They did meet some people, and there was actually occasions where there were students that recognized the heroes, and when later confronted, said they didn't reveal their identity because of that respect. That admiration, that understanding of selflessness that is a superhero. So the students go back fighting against crazy supers with super enhanced abilities, and Globe shows up, enhances Nick's ability, and Nick does his best to turn the tides of the battle, manipulating luck in a way that he had never been able to do before, which is actually very fascinating when they bring it out and they describe how it works. But Nick, he can only do so much, right? And there is death and destruction, and I want to say this whole book ends not on a cliffhanger, because it is a resolved one encompassing story, but it definitely does end heavy, with a heavy atmosphere, and it really leaves you ready and waiting for year 4. And when I finished year 3, Year 4 was barely being written. It's been a long wait, but I am happy to say I have read year 4 and I have listened to year 4. So look forward to that review in a future video. So that was a huge synopsis of this story. As big as it sounds, I left out a lot. I could ruin this book completely and just spout out every single spoiler and it wouldn't even matter, because this book isn't one of prestige. This story is about the journey. It's about the drive, and you'll enjoy that just going through it regardless. So 5 out of 5 hands down. Narration, Kyle McCarly, I'm like a super fanboy of him. This universe is huge, distinct characters. It's amazing how when they come into play, just you identify with them right away. And we get some appearances from our Corpies standpoint, which is awesome. And it's just amazing how his characters do not overlap. Some of them sound similar, but if you really pay attention, he draws out the words on one, makes them shorter and more robust than the other. It's just amazing how he does it. So narration, 5 out of 5. Listenability, like I said, when I finished this book for the first time, year 4 was very in development. I've ran through all 3 books in sequence 3 times in a row, so I've listened to it 3 times. So listenability, 5 out of 5. I believe this book is 41 hours long, so that is saying a lot. And I have listened, I don't skip through the book, I actually listened to the whole thing over again. So that was Dro Talks. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, comment below. If you didn't, comment below. Subscribe, hit the bell to get notified, and we'll see you next time.